Hello and welcome back to the Scaling Europe show. I'm Seb. I'm here with Xavier. Xavier, you've got some exciting news to share. Can we just jump right in?
We can. Thanks so much for having me on the pod. Yeah, so I guess exciting news is that Wonder Studios is announcing a 12 million seed round today, led by Atomico, and some awesome angels across like the kind of tech, media, Hollywood landscape.
Amazing. And can you give a quick intro for those who may not know you or know the business? What is it that you've built?
Yeah, so me and my co-founder Justin have built Wonder Studios. It's an AI native studio, so the way to think about it is an entertainment business for like the next generation. So, obviously, AI is kind of changing a lot of different industries and landscapes, and one of the kind of key insights we had is that it's obviously an incredibly powerful creative tool that can unlock storytelling, not just with traditional film studios and people in Hollywood, but also with like emerging artists and emerging filmmakers. And so it's really about bridging that gap between technology to creatives and unlocking the power that AI basically has. So, in a nutshell, how do you make how do you make filmmakers founders? How do you make artists entrepreneurs? A big kind of driver of the business is can we work with some of the most exciting IP, some of the most exciting storytellers, and through leveraging AI and the creative process, bring those stories to life in a way that would have historically meant selling all of your rights to a Disney or a Netflix or whatever it is, or needing millions of dollars to produce it. So we're kind of bridging that gap, helping bring stories to life.
And that's who specifically you're targeting. You're targeting, there's lots of AI video companies that we're seeing either in like the training space or whatever, but you're really targeting the creative industry, right? You want to unlock their creative ability and give them the opportunity to build and almost like direct videos without having to do it in the old fashioned way.
Or combined with the old-fashioned way. I think, yeah, exactly. Like, I love analogies, so you probably get a lot of them on this. But like, I talk about like the AI gold rush that we're currently in. So you've got OpenAI and Google DeepMind that are extracting the gold. You've got Nvidia that are selling the picks and shovels, and you've got Wonder that's crafting the jewelry. And so what that really means is we're taking the gold of AI, but we're melding it with the, you know, platinum of storytelling, editing, directing, etc., to create ultimately the content that people are consuming. And so that kind of comes to life in two ways. One is, a services business, which is maybe less exciting to VCs, but has been, a huge success for us. I think that's where we'll partner with whether it's like Universal Studios and Google on the Lewis Capaldi music video, or Campfire Studios on a documentary, or TV commercials, or whatever it is. There's a kind of services advertising business, which is just providing high quality video creative content, leveraging AI. But then there's a whole IP side of the business, which goes to your point, which is really around um, how do we be the Y Combinator of IP, and can we find emerging like the next Steven Spielberg is probably doesn't necessarily have to be here in LA. They could be in Cape Town in their bedroom. And so, how do we find that next generation of filmmaking talent and help them get their ideas to market in a way that, yeah, it's just never been possible before?
That's really interesting. So you've got the two different propositions, the services bit, and can we talk a bit about that Lewis Capaldi video? Because I watched that, and it's phenomenal. I don't think you would know. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you would necessarily even think of it as AI in many respects. And since if you watched it 5 years ago, it would have fit in with lots of other amazing videos of that type. Maybe you'd have expected it to be like CGI or something done in a studio, but the quality is amazing. How did that opportunity come about? And yeah, what did that partnership look like?
So, thank you very much. I can't take basically any credit. Justin, my co-founder, is just incredibly creative, incredibly talented. He and the whole team that worked with him on it. They Justin started as an actor, actually on the film 28 Days Later, and then
No way.
met Danny Boyle through that process, who became a mentor to him and went on to be like a young BAFTA winning filmmaker and a creative director, and not only at 11 Labs but also at like traditional kind of marketing advertising business. So he kind of came up doing music videos, and so I think what people don't see about the Lewis video, what we tried to do is, and I think it's quite cool when you see it, is like be very self-evident about the fact that this was an AI video. You know, we were trying to push into the stuff that couldn't be done traditionally. So if you see the different characters, like the water kind of like coming up when they're sitting there, like we were trying to do shots that would have been impossible and never kind of been done before, or at least within the time frame, which I think was about 3 weeks to make that video. But it came about. We've got great relationships with a bunch of the different tech companies in the space. That really comes from the fact that Wonder was kind of born out of community. Again, Justin set up this group called Real Dreams back in the day of like all the emerging AI artists and AI filmmakers. Because when he started getting into AI, obviously the climate is starting to shift pretty dramatically now, where people are like very interested in like how can we use this, or what are the benefits of this. But when he got into this early as a creative, there was a lot of kind of pushback in the space, and so he was able to reach out and start to find like-minded people. Obviously, some of those people went on to be extremely successful and now working at companies like DeepMind or OpenAI or 11 Labs. And so, we kind of built a reputation early as being a collective of some of the world's best artists in the space. And so when DeepMind and Universal approached us about the project, we were like, let's do it. But I think what people maybe don't see as well is that like that was a team of like 10 people behind that video. There was editors, DOPs, obviously AI artists, but it was like a huge, like a multi-person collaborative creative process. It wasn't like push a button, get a video.
Yeah, got it. And on the other half of the business, sort of the IP stuff, have you working with young creators right now who are at that stage of, creating new characters, creating new worlds or stories, musicians, whoever? Have you got examples that you can talk to on that side of things?
I do, yeah. It's funny you said musicians. I actually had dinner last night with an incredible musician who's also like got really into AI creativity and video creation. Who was kind of talking all of like it's just a yeah. It's funny you mentioned it, but the best example we've got is the anthology series we launched over the summer. I think this is probably one of the drivers of the investment round. I'm really excited about this. So the anthology is essentially it's going to be an ongoing thing, but it's kind of our ode to like Black Mirror or Love, Death, Robots, and it's this idea of we released 4 short films, a fifth one releasing very shortly, where we basically identified 4 of the best emerging filmmakers in our community, and the idea was that we would basically um, commission a short film similar to how Netflix does it with like a Netflix original. But the idea is that we would partner with that filmmaker to get their film to life, add value wherever we could, connect them with the different tech companies, connect them with different like voiceover talent or whatever it is to help make that dream, that film a reality. Package up those 4 films into an anthology and then release them over the summer on YouTube. And then the idea with the filmmaker is that if that short film gets turned into a longer film or a series or a game or whatever it is actually picked up by a major streamer, we'll actually share the IP 50-50 with the filmmaker. So we're trying to kind of build the Y Combinator of IP is another way of thinking about it. But what's been amazing about that anthology is like, it's we actually got onto NBC News. I was ill-fated. Like I got cut from the segment right at the last second, but the the actual films got onto like NBC News. We were lucky to have Danny Perkins talk about Wonder Studios on our behalf, and yeah, I think we've now hit like a million and a half views
Yeah.
of content. So that to me is like a huge project. It's going to be continuing, and it's like a real example of like launching filmmakers in the space.
And then is that what you want to do more of, partnering like that and doing more movies like that?
Yeah, I think 100%. There's different AI studios out there. Some are looking at like long form, trying to make traditional Hollywood films. My honest take is we're too early for that, and I don't think people are that interested in that. Like, I think people are interested in what does a hybrid future look like. So we're very interested in partnering. We've got this really great project coming out with Campfire, who worked on the Menendez brothers and WeWork, and they recently just had number one hit in the UK. But partnering with like documentary filmmakers or traditional filmmakers, and having an AI component that's allowing the film or the documentary to get made, like that's very interesting to me. Um, but the anthology stuff, that's definitely a focus because it's going to be a long journey. I think it's about unearthing that next generation of talent. And so for us, success is, if I'm honest, like we'd love to see one day one of the filmmakers that goes through our anthology goes on to work at a major studio, work with a major studio, and win an Oscar one day.
Yeah,
Like
that'd
we're
be
we're not
amazing.
trying to win an Oscar right now for like an AI long film. We're trying to like unearth talent and then be part of that ecosystem as it evolves.
Yeah, it's like I guess it's, yeah, like you say, like the YC or like a launch pad for young creatives, and it's almost like in the tech world, like a sort of MVP or lovable version, right? Or like give them the ability to build a mock up to test something in your kind of studio, and some of the quality is insane. In a lot of these short form videos, and they are really gripping you. The amount of emotion that can be packed into some of these like AI generated videos is still incredibly high. There's actually no less high than any other type of video. I don't think.
A lot of it's going to come down to the quality of the storytelling.
Yeah,
Like here, I think the kind of key insight is, the first big revolution in entertainment was YouTube, or like the last big revolution in entertainment was YouTube, where um, all of a sudden anyone had access to their own TV channel. Anyone could distribute their content around the world, um, which made like that created a proliferation of content. Now with AI, you've got the barriers to Hollywood grade production being lowered, and being lowered every week. With each new model release. But what's still going to matter is like, what is the quality of the IP? What is the quality of the storytelling? Because that's what's going to cut through. And obviously,
yeah,
how good is your distribution? And so those are two of the things that we're always thinking about is like, how do we identify great craft, great storytelling? And there's definitely like there's craft in terms of like how can you push the tools in AI? Maybe not just to like cross the uncanny valley, but how can you push a creative angle that wouldn't have been possible, like the Lewis video? But then also like what makes a great story, what captures people's imagination, and just to the MVP point, I think that's probably like it's a really good point because that's probably like a good example of the cross between Justin and I. You've got traditional filmmaking way of seeing the world, and then from my background, obviously building and scaling tech companies, I'm always interested in like how do we get an MVP, like how do we test, and so with AI for the first time ever, you can actually run pretty quick tests on different pieces of IP, without needing to spend $40 million before you make an entire huge film. You can actually test what the audience like, what audience is like, and what's a high potential story.
yeah, and yeah, it's a huge leap forward from anything that's come before. Because normally you'd have like a screen test at the end of production, and you'd show like some audiences and see what they think of it. Whereas now you're bringing it, yeah, way further forward. Let's go back to the round quickly. So you raised, a big seed round, $12 million, and it was, I think, it it was had a really it's got a really interesting range of creatives and kind of industry experts. Um, what was the rationale behind getting those kind of people on board as well? Was that to kind of like help you foster that community, to build the expertise? Uh, yeah, can you touch on that a bit?
For sure. I think, something just to say on the round is like people always see the success or the headline, and having been a founder before and knowing a lot of founders out there, like, you know raising money is an absolute grind. always, and there's always more people that don't get it or don't believe in it than the ones who do. Um, but we were extremely fortunate to kind of partner with Atomico on this, who are an incredible fund, and the team there have a very strong thesis about the way the world is moving in this space, and so I think generally when you look across the angels and the investors that we brought on, we were in a lucky position where we had a lot of demand in the end, for investing in this business, and so we really tried to optimize for people that like believed in the mission truly. We're kind of like huge, like actual champions, actual supporters. I think one of the things that's also very interesting, like having been an angel and worked with angels, is often it's kind of like a power law. It's like when you have like affiliate schemes or referrals. It's like 20% of the people do 80% of the referring. It's kind of the same with investors, if I'm honest. Like I think often you're trying to find like who are those investors that are actual champions of the business, and try to optimize for working with them. So obviously incredibly, blessed to be able to work with Atomica. We also were able to raise from Adobe Ventures, which I think is, we're so excited about it. I think it's a real testament. Something I didn't mention before, and like, sometimes intentionally, but I think it's worth just double clicking on is like underneath the business model, which is the services and the IP model, there's actually a whole technology layer that we are building. Now, we're not building underlying models, but we're kind of going up the value stack, and we're thinking about the problem of when creators are making videos like the Lewis music video. As I said, there were 10 people on that project. Um, how do they collaborate together? Where are the things that take the most amount of time that are quite arduous? How do we unlock, for example, like if we want to work with a traditional director from Hollywood who may not be like as fluent on the AI tools, how do we unlock their ability to cook alongside us and to kind of collaborate in one workplace? And so we are building proprietary workflows that sit underneath the IP that we're creating and the agency stuff that we're doing. And I think having Adobe come on board is a great signal there, and it's obviously like a testament to the fact that they saw there's a huge need for this type of solution. There's a lot of people trying to solve it, but that was a great statement of confidence. And then obviously like just incredible to have. We ended up getting a bunch of executives across some of the world's biggest marketing companies. Some incredible people from Hollywood. We obviously got Danny Perkins, who was the CEO of Studio Canal, as an advisor and close friend, and then obviously in the kind of tech community, angels from OpenAI and the founder of Eleven Labs, Maddie, who's a legend. So it was a great crew of people in the end, and a lot of hard work, but chose them all because they believed in it, and all in their own way can like unlock a lot of value for the business.
Yeah, a real amazing blend of creatives, experts in video, and then experts in AI, which is like ultimately exactly what you want. And going back to what you were mentioning about kind of that layer of technology kind of that sits underneath everything, is that sort of like editing tools and software, collaborative tools? Is that kind of what it is, so that you and I could be working on a video simultaneously? Is that kind of software layer?
Yeah, so I think like there's two ways of explaining it. It's probably just to up level it a bit is like one of the biggest problems in AI creativity is like the 100 tab problem, which is that you're using all these different tools across like all these different browsers. You're sending prompts over here. This is Justin's world. I'm not sending prompts over here and over there, but like when you see them cook together, it's like it's chaos. There's like 100 tabs. There's like different Google Hangout links. There's different like ways of sending over the files, and so it's something that we're trying to drive down on is like just bit by bit focus on the elements that are taking the most amount of time that are complicated. And something that we're quite interested in is like this idea of the storyboard. So when we work with filmmakers or documentary makers and traditional directors, and we're kind of um, showing them like what could a scene look like or how could we envisage this, we like to throw it up on a storyboard, And so if you take that as like a one kind of rallying point for the different creatives, how can you have a storyboard canvas that actually allows people to make comments, move things around, make changes kind of in one place? That's like a very kind of key problem. Another one that is also just like probably this is like more boring, but I think like super important to the success of the entire space is, you know, when you're working on these major projects, we were lucky to have like an ad in Times Square with 11 Labs, and we had obviously the Lewis stuff, and there's others I sadly can't go into, but um, when you're working on a project of that scale, one of the things people are very interested in is like, how do you get to the output? And do you have a system of record for like the prompts you use to create the output? And so again, if you've got lots of different creators working on a project, you want to have a system and a kind of engine where like that stuff is stored and tracked, and you're able to reproduce like this is how we got to the end output in a way that's going to satisfy like some of the biggest companies in the world. So less of an exciting feature, but just an example of something that like is needed and a gating factor to the space succeeding.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's really interesting. Yeah, it's one of those things that you wouldn't necessarily think about as like an individual creator at being a problem that everybody has when they're doing these prompts. And you're right, like the paper trail of prompting, yeah, it spans like multiple models, and it's like, yeah, you're right, all over the place. And going back to the round, it's a big round, $12 million seed round. What are you going to be spending and investing that cash on?
So I'd say there's like the simple answer is building out the IP side of the business and investing in the technology. The engineering team has grown from one a few months ago to now five. We're really excited to bring on the team from Playbook 3D, Skylar and JD. These guys are amazing entrepreneurs. They'd raised a few million for their original business, and like super technically strong, have been cooking in the space for years. And so bringing them into the team has been an absolute step change. So I think we're really interested in like how can we double down on the technology side, because I think that's going to be a key part of the equity story moving forward. And not only that, but like in order for us to scale some of the stuff we want to do, we're going to need to be faster, more efficient. And so like there's a lot of investment there. And then, if I'm honest, like we're really interested in like we've just launched our office in New York. We got I think we've got about 5 people there now, full time, which is great. I'm obviously out here in LA right now, hiring people, but where we'd love to be is a kind of small hub in LA, a small hub in New York, and then we really want to invest, back home in London, particularly like Justin's home in East London, hiring and training up like that next generation of creatives. And so that's a big focus for us. How can we kind of be a beacon of talent locally and start to train up like traditional creatives on these tools so we can meet the scale that is no doubt coming.
And with the IP stuff, I imagine it's a long term play, or are you expecting it to, I guess with some of the anthology stuff, like some of it does, I guess, show quite quickly, but I imagine it's a bit like venture capital generally, right? You look at the YC model, it's like a 10, 15 year cycle that you hope to get returns when these things really blow up, and that may take years. Does that impact the way that you're thinking about the business and growth?
It's such a great question, and the answer is like if we were just doing the anthology, the answer is like 100% yes. Like that's a VC style model. Now I think it's a little bit easier because this like the one distinction with the VC model is like there's obviously a power law in VC, and you need to spend millions and millions of dollars. The VC model is kind of similar to the traditional Hollywood model as well. If I'm honest, like it's a very hits driven business. Um, AI is changing that slightly because you're able to produce things at a much lower cost. Um, the return profile is a bit different. So like I think that's still to be determined. Like what does that business model look like so much with the anthology? I think excited to see where that lands. But outside of the anthology, there's a ton of stuff we're doing in IP that I think can have a lot faster payback period and is a huge opportunity. So can't go into like a huge amount of detail on it, but one of the things we're doing is partnering with the. It's one of the fastest growing kids books in Europe. They've sold over 5 million copies, and we're spinning up a kind of mini YouTube series in
Oh,
partnership with them as a joint venture. And one of the things we're looking at doing, like leveraging 11 and AI, is translating the dubbing those kids episodes into multiple languages. And so I think there's a huge opportunity, particularly in kids animation. Again, amazing to have Danny kind of advising the team. He was at Studio Canal when they made Paddington. We've got some incredible people across the board who have worked on some of the biggest kids animations ever. And so um, I'm really interested in like, can we find emerging IP, particularly in that space, that already has an audience. It's like a really, like, let's just say it's like a really successful local story in one European market, and can we make that a global success? And I think for the storyteller, for the writer, this is an unbelievable chapter in history, because historically that they either would have had to have sold all their rights to Disney or another studio, or they would need millions of dollars to kind of front run the animation costs. Whereas, like, for the first time ever, this is kind of putting more ownership in the hands of that author, and you can get mini episodic content out on YouTube to the masses and build an audience and build a brand relatively quickly. So I think projects like that have a lot of potential to turn into like pretty quick revenue successes.
no, that's super interesting. I was actually I'm trying to do some more content on TikTok, and I was literally just on TikTok before this call, and I saw it was almost like a David Attenborough style video, but of Pokemon, and it was like, narrating the lives of Pokemon in the wild, and obviously all AI generated. But people were commenting on it like, "Wow, I would watch this all day, every day if this was like, on Netflix or something." So there's definitely,
That's
yeah, I think,
hilarious.
yeah, it's like an amazing opportunity to bring something to life in a whole new format and a whole new way that hasn't been done before.
It's funny with stuff like that. Like, there's just on that. Like, there's some like super creative, funny people out there. Like some of the
Yeah.
trends that go blow up on TikTok or X or whatever. Like with like people doing using Sora. I think obviously a market. I think the thing that we need to be very cognizant of is like what's going to be an enduring
Yeah.
piece of IP. And I think that's where like the bridge to like the traditional industry is going to be so important, because they have really nailed like storytelling.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's amazing. That's the thing. Like, there's so many applications of this. That is also part of the challenge. It's like, where do you focus? And so
Yeah.
that's why, like, we do kind of bring it back to like, what is an enduring story? What is a piece of IP that like has has kind of stood the test of time, has millions of fans and an audience, and how do we then bring that into like a new medium at a scale that was not possible before?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it's an amazing idea, and I think if things go well, you're going to be creating the future generations of amazing bits of media and content and TV programs and short form, and propel the careers of like young creatives forward, which I think is an amazing mission. But look, thank you so much for joining me. Like, congratulations on the round. And I look forward to following along, and I'll be like tuning into all the videos and the creatives and seeing what they produce.
I appreciate it. You're a legend. Thanks, man.
No, no worries.